You will secure your lives. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord.
As the commentator said, we celebrate the 9th World Day of the Poor today. Pope Leo XIV issued a message encouraging Catholics to recognize the poor not as objects of charity, but as witnesses of hope. The theme this year is "You Are My Hope." The day encourages prayer, charitable actions, and a spirit of humility and solidarity with those in need. The theme of hope aligns perfectly with our readings today. If you look at the shelves of any bookstore or scroll through any movie platform, you'll find an entire genre dedicated to the end of the world. The Hunger Games, The Walking Dead, The Road, Station 11, Left Behind, even Marvel, Star Wars, and science fiction stories get in on it, with worlds falling apart, societies collapsing, heroes trying to survive the unthinkable. There's a reason these stories capture our attention. We're fascinated by endings, not because we want them to happen, but because something in us feels the weight of how fragile our world can be. And we might wonder, what would I do if everything changed? How would I handle the end of something so big? Some people become interested in predicting the end times. Others think about the imagery, like signs in the sky, nations rising, conflicts, and chaos. And some of us tend to think, I've got enough going on today. I'm trying to handle the world I already have. The Church gives us these scriptures today not to make us anxious, not to turn faith into a disaster movie, but to invite us to look deeper past fear, past predictions, and into the heart of what Jesus wants us to understand. There are two things that Jesus says we don't need to worry about. We don't need to know when all of this will happen. Jesus speaks urgently, but he also says clearly that no one knows the day or the hour. The timing isn't the point. God's not asking us to figure that out. And we don't need to know what it's going to look like. Is it going to be dramatic, like a Hollywood movie with fire and smoke and collapsing buildings, or something slower that brings it on itself? Jesus doesn't answer that. Satisfying our curiosity is not the purpose of this gospel. The real question is, how does Jesus want us to feel about whatever the end looks like? And his answer is astonishingly hopeful. Do not be terrified. Do not let fear run your life. Do not be people who see endings and jump to despair. Instead, Jesus calls us to a strength that trusts. When the world as we know it ends, whether globally or personally, God is still God, and God is still with his people. The gospel was written for people who had already suffered deeply. By the time Luke wrote these words, something catastrophic had already happened. The Temple of Jerusalem had fallen. The center of Jewish worship, everything that signified God's presence, had been turned into rubble by the Romans. And into that devastation, Jesus speaks. Even when everything familiar is gone, even when you rely on collapses, the foundation of God's relationship with you has not moved at all. We do think about endings. We lose our health, we lose people we love, we lose careers, communities, our sense of where we belong. A dream we treasured falls apart, a relationship changes, a chapter in life closes, even when we aren't ready. And you know, all these things hurt. The cross is real. Jesus is telling us not to let endings have the final word. When something ends, God is not gone. When something collapses, God is not defeated. When you stand in front of the rubble of what used to be, God is there with you. Jesus tells us where true strength comes from, not from anger, not from withdrawal, not from trying to rebuild as it was, not from clinging desperately to what is already over. Jesus says the strength we need comes from wisdom, the wisdom of knowing that our story is held inside a larger story, the wisdom of trusting that what feels like an end is never an end with God. The worst moments of our lives can become the places we experience God the most, not because suffering is good. Christian hope is not naive. A poet once wrote that hope is not the belief that everything in life will work out, because sometimes it doesn't. Hope is the trust that in the end, everything will make sense in God. That is the heart of today's readings. Malachi promises that for those who fear the Lord, the Son of Justice will arise. Paul encourages the Thessalonians not to grow weary. And Jesus tells his followers, stand firm, hold fast. Your endurance will save your lives. Endings do not define us. God does. So whether the end of the world comes in our lifetime or the end of a chapter in our personal lives arrives tomorrow, the same truth stands. With God, the end is never the end. There is always a resurrection hidden somewhere in the rubble. And so today, Jesus invites us to live not with fear, but with quiet courage, a courage that comes from knowing that every ending is held inside a larger story whose final chapter is written by God, who never abandons his people. My prayer for us today is that God gives us the perseverance to trust him through every ending until the day the whole story is revealed and everything is made new.